Hi you guys, we're going to do section 11.5 and we're going to be graphing quadratics. We've graphed quadratics before. Remember, it's a parabola. We have done some shifts to the right, to the left, up and down. We're going to kind of look at graphing a different way, and it might even seem a little bit easier to you. Remember, if the number in front of your x squared is positive, your parabola is going to open up. Positive is up like a cup. If it's negative, it's going to open down. It's down like a frown. Like if you're a negative person, you frown. If you're a positive person, you smile. So this is like a smile. This is like a frown. Okay, so the way it's written out, it's going to look super complicated, but I can promise you it's not going to be. We'll do some problems and I'll show you. You're going to have to find the vertex. Okay, remember a quadratic is in the form of ax squared, hence the same a right up here, ax squared plus bx plus c. This is a quadratic equation. To get your x value for the vertex, okay, your vertex is like this point right here or this point right here. Okay, so to get the x value for the vertex, it's the opposite of b over 2a. If you will look at your quadratic formula, and if you took off everything past that, plus or minus the square root, if you took away all that, you'd have left the opposite of b over 2a, and that's exactly what this is. This is where it comes from. So this is how you get the x value of your vertex. To get the y value, you're going to just evaluate the function at that x value. So this is what it looks like. That looks horrendous. It's really not. So in mathematical terms, this is your x value. This is your y value. Your x value is the opposite of b over 2a. You have to remember that. That's going to make everything so much easier for the rest, for some word problems that we're going to do for the rest of this section. And then to get your y value, you just plug in your x value back into the function. Okay, I'm telling you, this looks complicated. It's not so bad. We will work some problems together. But I want to show you the things that you're going to have to do when you graph. The problems on your test are going to ask you to find the vertex. Your vertex has to be listed as an ordered pair. It's going to ask you for the axis of symmetry. It's going to be equation. Your axis of symmetry is going to be a vertical line. So remember when we wrote equations of vertical lines, it was V-nox. So it's going to be x is equal to, you need your x-intercepts. Those are just your solutions, your roots. They will be written as an ordered pair if there's one, pairs if there are two. And then you want your y-intercept. And lastly, we're going to just connect all that with a graph. So hang in here with me. We're going to do some problems together. I hope I don't forget to include any of those things. And you're going to see it's not quite so difficult. It looks daunting. I can promise you it will not be. So let me put this back up here and get where we can work some problems. Okay, the first problem that we're going to work is going to be where f of x, hold on a second, where f of x is equal to x squared plus 2. So we want to find the vertex, but remember this needs to be written in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And there's not an x term in here. That means it was multiplied by 0 and it's gone away. So really and truly, we have that 1x squared plus 0 times x is 0, and then that c is 2. Okay, so to find the vertex, our x value, I'm just going to tell you this, or maybe I should do it this way. The x value of the vertex is going to be the opposite of b. So b is 0, so it's opposite of 0, over 2 times a is 1. Well, 0 over anything is 0. Okay, so that's our x value. To find our y value, we're going to plug, remember f of x means the same thing as y. F of x means the same thing as y. So we're going to do f at 0. That's just our function notation. We've done that before. You guys did great when we did that. Is equal to 0. We're going to plug x, or 0 in for x. So it's going to be 0 squared plus 2. That's 0 plus 2, which is 2. Okay, you have to write your vertex as an ordered pair. So our vertex is the point, 0 is our x value, 2 is our y value. So it's the point 0, 2. Okay, the next thing that you're going to have to do is the axis of symmetry. So parabolas are symmetric, and the line of symmetry goes right through the vertex. Okay, so if this were your graph, this axis of symmetry goes right through that vertex right there. So to get the equation for the axis of symmetry, it's just going to be x is equal to whatever the x value is for your vertex. X is equal to 0. In math terms, it's going to be that x is equal to the opposite of b over 2a. That's your, oops, you can't see it. The opposite of b over 2a. This is your axis of symmetry. So we've done the vertex, we've done the axis of symmetry. To get your x-intercepts, we're going to let our quadratic equation equal 0. Okay? So this is kind of a weird problem to start off with, because if we use the square root property to solve this, and we subtracted 2 from both sides, and we get x squared is equal to -2, we know that that cannot happen. Not only that, you can't factor that. So, I mean, you can't factor that. That's never going to be true. So the deal is this. There are no x-intercepts. Okay, there are no x-intercepts. There are no answers. It's never going to cross the x-axis. Okay, your y-intercept. To get your y-intercept, what am I doing? To get your y-intercept, anytime you want to find your y-intercept, let x equal 0. Let x equal 0 and plug everything in. So if x is 0, we kind of already done that. If we let x equal 0, we're going to get 0 plus 2, which is 2. Okay, so anytime for any problem, this is the easiest thing to do to get that x-intercept, to get that y-intercept. You're always going to let x equal 0, and you can see that. Okay, so to get your y-intercept, you're going to let x equal 0. So we plugged 0 in for x into our original equation, and we got y is equal to 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to graph it. I'm going to come up here. Again, you know, I don't believe in buying graph paper. We're sketching. Okay. Our vertex was 0, 2. Oh, let me back up. On your test, you're going to have to write your y-intercept as a point. Okay, remember we let your x equal 0, and we found out that y is 2. So you have to write your y-intercept as a point. Okay, we let x equal 0. We found out that y is 2. So let's go through. We found out that our vertex, are y'all getting seasick? We found out that our vertex was 2, 0. So 2, 0 is our vertex. We didn't find that at all. Sorry, our vertex is 0, 2. Sorry, you guys. Okay, it's 0, 2. This is our vertex, 0, 2. This is also our y-intercept. Our y-intercept, just on this one problem, our y-intercept and our vertex is the same thing. Sorry that I goofed you up. And it never crosses the x-axis. The number in front of x squared is positive, so it's going to open up. This is your axis of symmetry, and we kind of do a little dotted line. This is your axis of symmetry where x is equal to 0. And so our parabola is just going to do this. It's going to look the same on both sides of the line of symmetry. Okie doke. So see, that's not so bad. It'd be a whole lot easier if I didn't mess up all my words. But let's do another problem. Okay, we have f of x is equal to negative x squared plus 1. This negative lets us know that it's going to open down. So the first thing that we want to do is let's find our vertex. Okay, let me see what. Let's find our vertex. So to find our vertex, the x is going to be the opposite of b over 2a. Well, this is a lot like the problem that we just did. So let's write this so that we can see what our b value is. It's going to be negative 1 x squared is our, negative 1 is our a. Since we don't have an x in there, it's 0 times x and then plus 1. So to get our vertex, it's going to be the opposite of 0 over 2 times our a is -1. So 0 divided by anything is 0. Okay? So now to find our y value, we're going to do f at 0. We're just going to plug this in. F at 0 is equal to -0 squared plus 1, which is 1. Okay, so our vertex is the point 0, 1. Our vertex is the point 0, 1. So the next thing that we want to do is our axis of symmetry. Our axis of symmetry. And that's just whatever our x value was for our vertex. X is equal to, we got 0. Okay, remember it's going to be the opposite of b over 2a. It's the same thing as the x value for the vertex. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do are to find our x-intercepts. So to find our x-intercepts, we're going to let y equal 0. So 0 is equal to -x squared plus 1. I don't want my x squared to be negative. Oops, let me move up here, sorry. Okay, to get our x-intercepts, you let y equal 0. To get your y-intercept, you let x equal 0. So to get our x-intercept, y is 0. I don't want this to be negative. I'm going to divide every single thing by a -1. So now I have 0 is equal to x squared minus 1. Okay, this is the difference of two perfect squares. You were told you were going to see this repeatedly. And you have, to get x squared, it's x and x. To get a -1, it's a +1 and a -1. Okay, so these are equal to 0. So I'm going to set x plus 1 equal to 0. Subtract 1, and I get x is equal to -1. I'm going to set x minus 1 equal to 0. Add 1, and I get x is equal to 1. Okay, remember our y value for each of these is 0. We let y equal 0, and these are our x values. So we have two x-intercepts. It's the point -1, 0. You have to write these as points on your test on the computer, and 1, 0. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do is find our y-intercept. To find our y-intercept, we let x equal 0. So remember, f of x and y are the same thing. So we're going to find our y-intercept, we let x equal 0. So we have f at 0 is equal to -0 squared plus 1. So that's just equal to 1. So your y value is equal to 1. You have to write this as a point though. So that means your x is 0, your x is 0, your y is 1. So your y-intercepts, your x is 0. For your x-intercepts, where are we? Right here. For your x-intercepts, y is 0. Okay, so we're going to put all this information on a graph, hopefully where you can see it, maybe like right about here. Let's see what we can do. Okay, our vertex was the point 0. We're not going up or down any. We're going to go up 1. Okay, our axis of symmetry is x is equal to 0. So this is just our axis of symmetry. We just kind of draw dotted lines. Move this up a smidge. Okay, our x-intercepts are the point -1, 1 and the point -1, 0 and the point 1, 0. Okay, and our y-intercept is just our same thing as our vertex this time. So we're going to graph it. We're just going to do dot to dot and graph it. It should look the same on both sides of that axis of symmetry, or pretty close to it. Okie doke. There's that graph. Okay, one more. We're going to graph f of x is equal to x squared minus 6. Okay, this x is positive. It's going to open up. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to find our vertex. Okay, just like the other problems that we worked, we want to know what b is. Well, b is obviously 0, but I'm going to write it out anyway because I like to see it. X squared plus 0 times x minus 6. So to get the x value of our vertex, remember it's going to be the opposite of b over 2a. So the opposite of b is the opposite of 0 over 2 times 1. 0 divided by anything is 0. Okay, so our 0 is our x value for the vertex. To find the y value, we're going to do f at 0. That's equal to 0 squared minus 6, which is negative 6. Okay, so our vertex is the point 0, negative 6. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is our axis of symmetry. And it has to be an equation, just like this has to be a point. Our axis of symmetry has to be an equation. That was on the first page of the notes. And it's just x is equal to the opposite of b over 2a, or the x value for the vertex, which is 0. Okay, now we're going to find the x-intercepts. To find the x-intercepts, we're going to let y equal 0. Well, remember, f of x and y are the exact same thing. So I have f of x is equal to x squared minus 6. So I'm going to plug 0 in. Okay, I like my 0 on the right side, so I'm just going to do this. I have x squared minus 6 is equal to 0. That doesn't factor. This is not a perfect square, so this is what I'm going to do. X squared, I'm going to use the square root property, is equal to 6. Take the square root of both sides. Remember, I have to have two answers, so x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 6. Okay, if you have a calculator, you can kind of sort of figure out what that is. I know that the square root of 4 is 2, and I know that the square root of 9 is 3, and this is a little bit closer to 2 than it is to 3, so I'm just going to kind of guesstimate that it's going to be a little bit less than, can y'all see what I'm doing? I know the square root of 4 is 2, the square root of 9 is 3. If you have your calculator, plug that in your calculator. I don't have one right here. I know that 6 is a little bit closer to 4 than it is to 2, so I'm going to say it's somewhere around 2.4, okay? So I know I've got negative 2.4 and a 0. Now I'm just doing this for graphing. I'll tell you what you would write on your test. And then a positive 2.4 and 0. On your test, you would write this as negative the square root of 6 and 0 and positive the square root of 6 and 0, but I did this for graphing purposes. This is just so we can graph it. Okay, that's our x-intercepts. The last thing we want is our y-intercept. And let me move this up where you can see it maybe. Our y-intercept, we're going to let x equal 0. So if x is 0, we have 0 squared minus 6, which is negative 6. So and we have to write it as a point. Our x value is 0, our y value is negative 6. Okay, so let's graph this. Okay, here we go. Our vertex is 0, negative 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, our axis of symmetry is y is equal to 0. Sometimes I'll ask you to put that, it's x is equal to 0, Venox. X is equal to 0. They will ask you to write that on your graph. I don't think you have to do that on your test. I could be wrong, but just make sure that you know that it's a dotted line or whatever that you're asked to do on your test. Okay, so let's go over here. This is 1, 2, 3. This is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so negative 2.4. This is 1, 2. This is like 2.5, so it's not quite negative 2.5. Over here, it's not quite positive 2.5. So those are my two intercepts. This is the same thing. My vertex and my y-intercept are the exact same thing. So I'm going to do dot to dot. I'm going to draw in the parabola. Okay, there you go. So remember, anytime you're graphing your parabolas on your test, you're going to be asked to find the vertex, the axis of symmetry, which if you know your vertex, you know your axis of symmetry because it's just x is equal to, and you have to know your x-intercepts and your y-intercepts, and you have to graph it. Okay, we're going to do some more graphing another day. That's all for right now. Thanks. Bye-bye.